The story starts on the day Haruka and his classmates were transported into another world. He was reading as usual during lunch break, accepting the reality of his life as a total loner. As to why he's a loner, he just wanted nothing to do with his classmates, since they'll just get in the way of his reading. If you divide the people in his class into groups, it'll be the delinquents, the gyarus, the jocks, the nerds, the class rep, and the rest are in the others category. Of course, Haruka doesn't belong to any group, but one day, something in his class happened. A giant magic circle appeared, and he immediately knew it was just like the ones in the light novel he just read. He got excited for a bit, but then he realized that going to another world is actually a pain in the ass, so he tried to escape. His body moved on its own and tried to resist and get out of the classroom. He resisted with everything he had. He couldn't escape through the door, but when he noticed his classmates started to disappear, he picked his last bet, getting above the ceiling. However, just when he thought he saved himself, another magic circle appeared on the ceiling, taking him into a blank space. Haruka complains about the generic white void thing, wondering if there shouldn't be an overweight king or a pretty princess beyond the reach of any nerd. There's nothing like that there, but he does notice a lonely old guy, as lonely as he is. The old man runs towards him, seemingly panicking, asking him why he's still there, since the others have already left. Haruka assumes that the old man is kind of the god of another world, and he told him the rest of his classmates were already transported, so he was left behind. He now has to get ready to get transported, and he has to pick his status and skills for another world. Normally, each person gets 50 points and uses them to pick skills and magic, but apparently, it's the first time the old guy summoned 43 people, so all the cheat skills have been taken, leaving only worthless skills. Haruka still tries to take a look at the remaining skills, but he can only complain to see how useless they are. They go from cane to corporate proactiveness, which makes him wonder if he'll fight monsters with a stick or if he'll be an office worker in another world. Seeing all the leftover skills, Haruka confronts the old man, asking him what he's going to do about this, since he can't even get past the starting village with these. After Haruka complains and criticizes him so much, the poor old man snaps, saying that, in that case, he'll grant him all the remaining skills. Just like that, Haruka gains all the leftover worthless skills, which guarantees him to a hellish hard mode. He's finally transported into another world, feeling completely lost and unprepared. He's sent there with a villager set, which allows him to store unlimited items in a bag. There he finds things like contact lenses, a mantle, leather boots, a wood stick, a ring, and other things, though he just sees them as the leftover stuff. After getting prepared to be lured into that world, he decides to check his stats, though he has to throw a dice before he can see anything. This is because one of his many leftover skills, which says that he can allocate 1 point to each stat or by rolling dice. Haruka once again complains, but he throws the dice, and they lay on the letter M, though he doesn't know what this means. He decides to add it to his luck stat, and is surprised to see that M actually stands for max. He also notices he has 2 extra skills, probably because he was transported alone. One of them is loner, which makes him live alone with no friends, and it doesn't allow him to form a party. It seems he can use servitude because of his loner status, but Haruka is still sad to know he won't get any harem in this world. He easily accepts that and decides to start his life in that world, wanting to secure a base of operation and find some food. His visibility is really bad with all the trees, so he decides to use the contact lenses he saw in his bag before, and surprisingly, they provide the appraisal skill. This allows him to discern many things, so now he can see crystal clear, and he quickly finds edible mushrooms. Now being able to find anything he wants, Haruka goes to a river to collect some water, and he later finds a cave. The place is seemingly empty, and it looks spacious and comfortable, so living there might be a good idea. Haruka decides to pick twigs and leaves in the forest, and by using temperature magic, he manages to light a fire, which should be enough to keep beasts away. When he checks his status, he realizes his temperature magic leveled up, and that unlocks fire magic. He also got clairvoyant sight, presence detection, and enemy tracking, which must have been because he was on the lookout for monsters, though he doesn't know what he'll do if monsters actually show up, since all he can do right now is to smack them with sticks. Despite that, Haruka tiredly falls asleep in that cave, using a tent and lanterns he got from his special bag, and that way, he makes it through the first day on another world alone. Now on the second day, he's relieved to see there were no problems at night, since he has items to repel monsters in his bag, and his shut-in job title protects his living space. Despite this, he has an empty stomach to fill, so he creates fire using the fire magic he learned the day before, and prepares a decent meal with the mushrooms he collected and the beef jerky from his bag. The villager set he got even includes a frying pan and knives, so cooking is not really an issue. With a little bit of seasoning, he's delighted to finally have some breakfast, surprised by how good it actually tastes. After his stomach is full, Haruka walks through the woods, deciding that the cave will work as his base. So next is securing food and taking some safety measures. As he collects some mushrooms, he suddenly detects a presence with his skill, and he's terrified to see goblins. They're small fries, but their stats are higher than expected, so Haruka wonders if he can win. However, the fact that he entered the forest means he will have to deal with them, so he can't waste this chance, though he doesn't know if a stick will do the job. He tries wrapping the stick with magic using packing, a skill that allows him to wrap all manners of things with magic. It turns out better than he thought, and without relying on cheat skills, he's sure he'll surpass them. Haruka hits the poor goblins with a stick, managing to read all their moves just to finish them off with some magic. After that, he decides to go back to the river, washing his face as he thinks about the fact that he survived his first battle, even if they were just two small goblins. He knows there is a lot to reflect on, but he admits he moved a lot, so to him, that is good enough. With that in mind, he heads back towards the cave, feeling like he's actually more exhausted mentally rather than physically. Once again, he lights a fire and cooks some mushrooms, since that is all he has for now, though he doesn't complain. Haruka got a wooden club from one of the goblins he defeated earlier. It's heavy, and the range is really short, so he can't really use it. Even his wooden stick is better, so that will be good enough for now. He decides to check his status once again, and cheers when he discovers he leveled up, and even his stats are more than doubled now. His cane mastery also leveled up as well, even though all he did was just whack things with his wooden stick. He notices his sensitivity skill also went up, which is kind of strange, since the goblins didn't capture him or did questionable things he would only read in a light novel. He also got magic infusion, and that is probably because he enchanted his stick with magic. His calisthenics went up as well, even though he's only been in that world for a day. On the third day, as expected, Haruka is already getting sick of eating only mushrooms. He would love to eat meat, but if he said that, the class rep would definitely get mad at him, saying that extravagance is bad for him. With that in mind, Haruka finishes his plate of mushrooms, now ready to enhance himself, using Magic Infusion Level 1. That skill cloaks the body with magic and enhances them, empowering physical and magic defense. As for the effects of that magic infusion that he got the day before, he can now get a complete package of body enhancements plus physical and magical defense. After doing that, Haruka notices his appraisal skill also went up to level 2, but he can now see question marks on the names of the things, so he wonders if the skill just got downgraded. Unable to understand and not wanting to think about it, he decides to exit the cave, convincing himself that it is time to head out already. Haruka walks into the woods one more time, this time wanting to properly practice some magic for the very first time. As he walks through the forest, he gets excited to find food, though it is only more mushroom once again, but he still claims that the forest has already blessed him. After thinking about it for a moment, he changes his mind and throws the mushroom away, realizing how sick of it he already is. Completely desperate, he starts searching for something else to eat in his surroundings, wondering why meat doesn't just grow out of trees in this world. Haruka searches desperately through the forest until he remembers he is actually there to practice his magic, and he scolds himself for getting distracted so easily at the sight of simple mushrooms. Getting himself together, he decides to use magic infusion, wrapping his whole body in magic. With that, Haruka is able to jump and run at high speed through the forest, surprised to feel so light and fast. He even feels kind of like he's teleporting somehow, and he gets excited to realize that his dexterity is off the chart. Now more confident than ever, Haruka runs through the woods until he finds a pair of goblins once again. He's sure that even if he's up against these strong goblins, he'll be able to easily defeat them. Just as he said, he runs towards one of the goblins and attacks it with his stick, defeating the poor thing with a couple smacks. Unlike before, now 2 goblins are definitely no match for him, and this is already going so much better compared to the day before. Haruka defeats the other goblin, once again, with just a few strikes of his wooden stick. He now feels more confident, like he might even be able to take 3 of them at once. However, when 3 goblins indeed show up in front of him, Haruka immediately hides behind some bushes, slowly leaving the place and just deciding that he should stop for now. He decides that he'll actually go home to test his other magics there, something a lot more safe. And so, just on his 3rd day, he went on a goblin hunt during the day, and then at night, he studied magic, or DIY to be exact. He had to go through a lot of trial and error for that one. And then, on day 5, Haruka finally succeeded in defeating a goblin in a single strike and decorated his base with some fancy stuff he proudly made himself. His life in this world is finally starting to go well, and with that taken care of, he decides to go hunting, trying to find some food besides mushrooms. At night, he chases a small bunny, desperate for some meat after so long just eating mushrooms. After a while, he finally catches the poor bunny, but he immediately senses a presence, and he knows it isn't goblins. Of all people, he's not pleased to see the delinquents from his class, so he tries to escape, not wanting to get involved with them. However, he senses someone else in the other direction, so he uses clairvoyant sight and now sees the Gyaris, the jocks, and even the nerds. Once he sees the class rep, Haruka lets the bunny go and realizes that this world is harsh and it would be better if he had some friends. He's known her since the first year of grade school, so he should at least say hi. But then again, he feels so free and isolated, and he can live the way he wants without anyone butting in, so he won't exchange this daily life with anything else. Right now, he's conquering this another world alone. Haruka immediately hides beneath some bushes when the group of delinquents gets near. They decide to inspect that area after hearing a voice, but when they do, the bunny from before comes out, so they laugh it off and quickly dismiss it. Sometime after, Haruka follows the delinquents, since he has to know what they're talking about, even though he wants nothing to do with them. However, he soon finds out that the guys are only being total perverts while talking about the girls from the class. He knows they've always been weird like that, but he's also sure that at least the girls have the class rep to protect them, and even if they try to cause problems, she'll definitely stop them. In that moment, one of the delinquents grabs from the neck a student named Tanaka. They want him to confirm if that skill of his will allow them to do what they want, also asking him how exactly it works. Haruka recognizes Tanaka, realizing that the delinquents are using him like a live search tool. One of them suggests going back with the others, and after they leave, Haruka assumes that the whole class must be upstream. However, he still believes that being a loner is the way to go, so Haruka starts walking in an entirely different direction. Once he gets home, he's shocked to see his loner skill just leveled up, and that probably because he avoided his classmates before. If Neat had leveled up too after all that hard work, he would have broken down right there, which makes him think that these titles really wreck his self-confidence. Though he's still only at level 3 himself, and that's probably because of these Master of None and Dummy skills. He knew they'd be hard to level up, but he's not sure what they even do. Master of None likely means he can't stay focused on any one thing long enough to hit it big, but it does let him handle most things pretty well. He wonders if Dummy makes him some kind of puppet, or if it's dummy as in useless idiot. That makes him think that this skill is bad, and probably the worst. On day 7, Haruka wakes up past midnight, complaining about all the noise he hears outside. He decides to go out in the forest to see what's going on, and laughs a little when he sees the nerds fighting some goblins. Haruka wonders if he should help, but decides to use appraisal on them, and realizes that they don't need help at all, since they've got way better classes than him. He wonders why he's the only NEET here, but then remembers that they're not stuck with trash like him, since they've got the OP stuff. This reminds him that their class was full of athletes and ace students, kids of celebrities and stuff too, so Haruka used to wonder how a normal kid like him would end up there. These nerds are definitely Isekai pros, so he figures they'll be fine and decides to leave. However, his perception skill allows him to see some goblins approaching them from behind, so Haruka decides to help. After taking down those goblins, Oda, the leader of the nerds, thanks him for the help, since he really saved them. Haruka awkwardly dismisses it, realizing he's been alone so long that he forgot how to talk. He invites them to his cave, and the group of nerds is clearly impressed by how fancy it looks. Haruka explains that he just learned earth magic, so he paired that with his packing skill. The nerds are amazed to see he did all of that by himself, commenting that it's not fair he gets it all to himself, since the place is so big. Haruka serves them some drinks and asks them what happened to everyone else, wondering what they're up to at night alone. After some hesitation, Oda confesses that they're actually on the run, explaining that it all started when everyone but him got transported to the forest. Everyone started panicking, wanting to go home, but the nerds were the only ones that remained calm, feeling confident with their stats and the information they know thanks to light novels. The delinquents immediately threatened them, wanting them to tell them all they knew. In the meantime, the class rep simply looked around with curiosity and then tried to reassure everyone, trying to make them calm down. However, a pack of goblins suddenly showed up behind her, and this made her freeze in fear. All the girls started crying, and even the delinquents were panicking. However, the nerds were all calmed and collected, since goblins are a piece of cake to them. When they easily took down some goblins, the jocks took some courage to fight along, managing to make a brave stand. The monsters were defeated, so the class rep quickly told everyone to move somewhere safer with more visibility. With her wits back, the class rep led everyone to a safe riverside clearing, and the nerds used their isekai and survival knowledge to help everyone set up camp. The class rep organized things and put everyone to work, and with that, they all came together and worked as one. Or so it seemed. The Gyaris decided that they didn't want to do any work, so they counted themselves out and left the group. Everyone else saw that, and the class rep couldn't do anything when the others also counted themselves out, wanting to leave all the work to the nerds. The class rep couldn't stop anyone, and just like that, the whole class fell apart. From that point on, only the class rep, the nerds, and a few other students did any work, while everyone else only complained about their boredom while doing absolutely nothing. Meanwhile, The nerds worked way too much, and they were stuck handling monsters too. It was rough, but they were set on leveling up after all. Charm probably grants control over people, and then there's Puppeteer, which is definitely bad news. Oda saw the delinquents pick those skills back in the White Room, so they decided to level up to stand up to the delinquents' wicked choice of skills. They also decided to keep close eyes on the delinquents, and that's when they heard them blab about their harem plan. Hearing that part of the story, Haruka wonders why they would just talk about it all in the open, making him think that they probably wanted to be caught or something. When the nerds heard about it, they immediately went to the class rep to tell her everything. Once she heard about it, the class rep decided something had to be done, saying that if that's the case, then they need to level up as well. However, the delinquents managed to use Charm and Puppeteer just a few days later, and the class rep happened to catch them right that moment. A few seconds later, all the delinquents were down and apparently unable to move. The nerds then took the chance to use their seal ability on their Charm and Puppeteer's skills. Once their forced harem plans were exposed, the delinquents were run out of the camp, but they came back for payback time not so long after. Creating chaos in just a few minutes, the delinquents attacked everyone, destroying everything and setting all tents on fire. After everything was completely destroyed, the delinquents left without a word, and for some reason, the nerds took all the blame for what happened. The Gyaris really let them have it, and everyone else also put the blame on them. The only one who stood up for them was the class rep, who tried to tell them that Oda's group did nothing wrong. A few other students took their side along the class rep, but it was all too much to take, so the nerds took off. After hearing all that happened, Haruka gets really emotional, realizing that they've been through a lot, so it must have been rough. Just because of that, he decides that tonight they'll have a feast, though all he has to offer is mushrooms, and the nerds don't seem so eager for it. Haruka ended up spending the next day with them too, thinking that not being a loner isn't so bad sometimes. When they finally decide to part ways, Oda asks him if he's really sure he doesn't want to come with them. He explains that they're headed downriver to look for a town and get started as adventurers, and out of the whole class, he's probably more in their group than any other. Haruka recognizes this, remembering that they used to share books and stuff back then. However, he declines in a dramatic way, not elaborating on his decision as he asks them to go already. After they leave, Haruka thinks that he would love to head into town, but with his cursed set of stats, he would only hold them back. He decides that it's better to go check on the others, since the nerds seemed worried about the class rep. On his way there, Haruka encounters a kobold, a small beast that immediately bites his hand. Despite getting a bit hurt, he manages to win against the kobold, and after walking around in pain for a while, he finds the camp, realizing that the place is empty. His enemy detection skill lets him see several footprints on the ground, and after following them, he manages to see the Gyaris, so he panics and decides to retreat home immediately. He wonders what he could cook today, wanting some fried chicken, even though everything he has is mushrooms again. Before he can escape, the Gyaris try to stop him and quickly start following him. Haruka doesn't stop running, since the Gyaris are the furthest thing from a life of quiet solitude. However, when he hears one of the girls say, "Please," Haruka stops in his tracks, wondering if he misheard or something. Once they catch up to him, the blonde girl asks him if he's friends with Oda's herd, clarifying that they're looking for them. Haruka mentions that he doesn't know about any Oda herd, but he does know some otaku nerds. The girl shouts that it's the same thing, and Haruka asks them why they're looking for the nerds in the first place, since they probably only want to put them to work again. To his surprise, the blondie explains that they just want to apologize, which actually manages to leave Haruka speechless. The other Gyaris explain that they totally see what they did now, and they realize that they're only alive thanks to the nerds. Still completely taken aback, Haruka recognizes that they seem serious, which is surprising, since you'd never find them apologizing back in the real world. Yet, he tells the girls that they'll never catch up to them, wanting to know if they can even make it out of these woods or fight monsters. Seeing their hesitation, Haruka asks them if they're going to go find their saviors and apologize, or if they're going to give up. Haruka demands an answer, knowing deep down that he's being harsh, but he knows that he'd be doing the nerds a disservice if he didn't check if the girls really mean it. Surprisingly enough, when Haruka looks back up at the girls, they're completely bawling her eyes out, saying that they just want to apologize. It's at that moment he realizes he messed up, since the next thing that happens is that the Gyaris ask him to teach them all they need to know to survive until they find the nerds. Completely taken aback, Haruka realizes that his subjugation skill just activated, all because he technically said yes by reflex. When he checks his stats, he sees his subjugation list, noticing the names of the girls, which are Gal Leader, Gal A, and Gal D. Haruka freaks out, wondering how this just happened, since now he has the 3 girls following him like ducklings. He doesn't like this situation at all, thinking that it's scary how little life is in their eyes, and how they'll finish monsters off without a word. and then they pull magic crystals off the monsters and bring them to him like dogs with a frisbee. He notices one of the girls has a scratch, so he pulls out a healing potion, but when he hands it to the gal leader, she uses the potion on him instead. Haruka doesn't know what to do anymore, only wanting to know how to cancel this subjugation thing. Without even noticing, the class rep finds him, and she seems really happy to see him, though she has to shout at him in order for him to notice her. On the other hand, we see the delinquents discussing their next plan, deciding that they firstly have to get rid of their problems before approaching the girls. Once Haruka finally notices the class rep right there, she complains about him not calling her by her name, as they've known each other since elementary school. He apologizes to her, and soon, all the girls from class catch up to them, so he realizes that everyone but the gal group stuck together. The class rep asks him what's wrong with Shimazaki, the leader of the Gyarus and the others, since something seems off with them. Haruka doesn't know how to answer that, and even he wants to know why subjugation activated back then. Once he explains what happened, the class rep obviously freaks out, asking him why he did something like that, since subjugation is something that's supposed to be used on monsters. He says that it just sort of happened, but this only makes him sound more suspicious, so all the girls stare at him with an ice-cold glare, not believing a thing. Not being able to explain anything, he decides to simply leave. But the class rep doesn't allow this. She shakes Shimazaki back to her senses and is relieved to see she's okay and out of her trance. The class rep orders Haruka to sit still as she explains all that happened to the Gyarus, and also listens to their side of the story. He's left alone again, like always, so he decides to practice expanding his house in the meantime. Haruka wonders if he can build a basement, so he starts using his magic right there. After a lot of concentration though, he ends up buried in the ground, so the class rep scolds him once again. He explains that he got bored while waiting, so she asks him if he's a cat who likes tight spaces or something. The class rep easily gets him out of the ground, explaining that Shimazaki told her all that happened, and she said that he came to help them and all of them. Haruka doesn't remember saying anything like that at all, but in a matter of seconds, he has all the girls thanking him, so he asks if he can finally head back home. The girls quickly object, clearly upset, since he's supposed to help them right now. On the other hand, the class rep just wonders what he means by going back home, wanting to know where he's heading. Haruka explains that he has a house, and the class rep asks him why he has a house here, wondering if he was born in this world or something. He just says that he had time on his hands, so he just built one in his spare time. The girls quickly gather around in a circle, discussing the situation and leaving him out once again. The class rep asks him how many people he can fit in his house, and Haruka mentions that maybe 240 or so, and more if they move the furniture out, and if they add in the kitchen, restroom, and bath, maybe even more. The girls are surprised to hear he even has furniture, and even more shocked to hear about all the other places. The class rep asks him what kind of mansion he's living in alone, saying that they've been living survival style out there. Haruka is also working on a guest room, but he decides that it's better not to mention that right now. Being encouraged by the girls, the class rep gathers the courage to ask him to let them stay at his place, even just for the night. Haruka immediately freaks out at the idea of having schoolgirls at his place for the first time, and it's even the entire class. He starts fantasizing at the idea, so the class rep scolds him, and he decides to lead them through the forest to his place. The girls have a hard time keeping up with his pace, and the class rep is weirded out when she sees corners and intersections in the woods. She jokingly asks if there's also convenience stores or something, and Haruka says that he actually thought about building a drugstore, but changed his mind at the end. After a long way, Haruka welcomes all the girls into his house, and they're all completely amazed by the place, since it looks like an actual mansion. They start running around excitedly, wondering if this is a dream, and saying goodbye to their tent life. He's kind of embarrassed they like it even more than the nerds, but he decides to show them around anyway. All his words are completely ignored the moment the girls see the bath, and in a matter of seconds, all Haruka sees are their clothes flying up in the air as they run into the bath happily, ignoring everything else. Not even the class rep can stop them from stripping, and Haruka comes to the conclusion that all their time in the woods turned them into savages. After all that ruckus, he celebrates being alone again after setting up a tent outside his house, which allows him to enjoy his peace and quiet. He knows only a loner could enjoy such a thing, but there's no way he could stay with a whole herd of schoolgirls. Haruka is startled to see the class rep staring at him right then, but she just thanks him for saving them. After the boys left, they've been all worried, so it's nice to feel at ease again finally. A fancy room, food, and a bath has everyone in high spirits once again, and they were able to bounce back. The class rep is sad she couldn't do anything for them, but Haruka assures her she's done a lot. He explains that she doesn't have to do what Oda did, since the nerds were practically raised for the day they got transported here. She can't go making comparisons, and she doesn't have to judge herself against guys born for this, since they're the weird ones. At the end, the class rep smiles, feeling grateful for his words, though she also mentions that if he has a better lifestyle than the nerds, then he's even weirder than them. That night, Haruka is barely able to sleep, since he couldn't stop thinking about all the schoolgirls staying in his house. The next day, a sweet girl he doesn't even know wakes him up in an unusual way, getting on top of him to tell him that breakfast is ready. Trying to ignore the fact she's literally on him, Haruka looks away and asks, "What's for breakfast?" trying not to make eye contact. The girl tells him that she prepared mushrooms and grilled fish, not expecting the strong head bump Haruka gave her for simply mentioning the word fish. The class rep comforts the poor girl, but Haruka just enjoys the grilled fish, tearing up as he wonders when was the last time he ate fish. Clearly confused, she asks him what his deal is, since he's been literally living in front of a river all this time. Haruka confirms this, explaining that he spent every day watching the fish while eating mushrooms. He couldn't catch any, since they're too fast and kind of slippery, so he never had any luck. Haruka asks them if they have an easy way to catch them, so the girls decide to show him. Once they get to the river, one of the girls uses lightning magic in the water, making all the fish jump. He excitedly asks her to do it again, and once the girl does, he wraps the lighting magic with his packing skill. Haruka lets that box fall into the water and finally manages to catch some fish. In addition to that, he also got himself that lighting magic while he was at it, now being level 1. Being quite lost, the class rep asks him what he just did, and he explains that by using his packing skill on magic, he can get whatever elemental magic it is. She mentions that that sounds pretty overpowered, so Haruka admits that even the worst skills have some use, apparently, since he could get magic just like that. A while after that, Haruka is sitting by the river next to the class rep as some of the girls play in the water. He asks her if they've decided what they're going to do, and the class rep says that they haven't really come to an agreement, but they're thinking of heading to town. Haruka remembers that the Gyarus did say they were going to hunt down the nerds, but Shimazaki appears out of nowhere to clarify they just want to thank them and apologize. The class rep calms her down, and then mentions to Haruka that she was thinking they should level up before heading for town. He agrees with that idea, since they're going to need a few more levels if they want to hunt down the nerds. Once again, Shimazaki protests, but Haruka ignores her and smiles, saying that he'll help out if they want to level up. The class rep thanks him, but she also clarifies that they won't be hunting Oda and company though. Haruka seems to be a little disappointed, saying that he wanted to see the clash between the nerds and the Gyarus with their OP skills. Still, sometime after that, all the girls gather in front of him to start their training. Haruka mentions that, before they start leveling up, he'd like to know where everyone's at. All the girls tell him what their level is, and he's terrified to see that they are all high level, and the lowest is level 16, when he's still only level 7. He doesn't think these overpowered girls even need him, but he decides to try either way. When he spots monsters behind the bushes, he instructs the girls to take down these kobolds, since it's an easy group of 3 low-level ones. All the girls seem confident about it, completely ready to finish them up right there and then. However, in a matter of minutes, the girls are laying on the ground, defeated, and Haruka claims that that was pathetic. He uses magic to expand his tent, and all the girls are quick to complain, saying that he didn't warn them kobolds are fast and bite. After discussing the situation, the girls decide to go out and try again, but Haruka notices that one girl decided to stay, and it is the sweet girl that woke him up this morning. She sheepishly apologizes, saying that she was testing him back then. The girl explains that when the boys attacked, they almost got her, and it was traumatizing, so she was worried he might attack them too. But he gave them a place to stay, food to eat, and even taught them how to fight, so he's nothing like those other boys. Haruka realizes that the girls have been through a lot, and the girl nervously tells him that she'll come wake him up again tomorrow when the fish is ready. He only smiles at that, deciding to call her Fish Girl, though she doesn't like that nickname very much. The next day, Haruka enjoys another delicious fish thanks to Fish Girl, and while he's eating, he overhears the girls talking about getting some payback on those kobolds, even after getting pummeled yesterday. Luckily, the class rep intervenes, saying that they need to train first, so they decide to start off with some weak goblins. The training was a little harsh on the girls, but after a lot of it, the day for payback on the kobolds finally arrived. Haruka observes them closely, noticing that the girls get kind of pissed when they notice the kobolds teasing them. He wonders if they can handle this, since there are already some girls giving up, saying that they're tired. Some of them are already down and out and sleeping, and some of the others are even faking sick to get out. Seeing all this, Haruka is clearly frustrated, saying that the class rep's training is no good at all. One of the kobolds attacks, but Fish Girl blocks him with her sword, and Shimazaki takes him down with a kick. Some of the other girls also join in and attack, and unlike last time, they finally manage to take down the 3 kobolds. The class rep cheers with them in victory, clearly happy to see the results of her training. Haruka seems relieved, saying that he was worried, but they really handled that pretty well. One of the girls even decides to shake hands with one of the kobolds, saying that it was a good fight, but they won't lose anymore. Soon enough, all the girls are cheering, and they're delighted with how cute the kobolds are, now wanting to keep them, for some reason. Haruka lies on the ground, exhausted, thinking that now he can get back to his loner life of freedom. However, the class rep approaches him to thank him, saying that now they can head to town together with him. This clearly takes him off guard, since he never said he was going with them, but the class rep seems to be set on that decision. The next day, all the girls pack their stuff, getting ready for their journey to town. Haruka warns the class rep, saying that there's no telling what might happen out there, so they have to keep their wits about them. In another scene, we see a student running from something under the rain, but he trips and falls, so he begs for his life, saying that he doesn't have a skill like that. The person chasing him doesn't say a word, and immediately goes for his neck, strangling him until the student doesn't move anymore, and leaving him there, alone. Now Haruka is deep in the woods with the girls from class, guiding them safely out of the woods. The delinquents are after the girls, so keeping the group safe is top priority, and for that they need to leave the woods as soon as possible. The group runs into a giant orc somewhere along the way, so Haruka instructs the girls to stand back, wanting them to watch and learn a thing or two about battling. Just before the monster is about to strike him, Haruka disappears, and in less than a second we see him hiding behind a tree, laughing at how sluggish that monster is. Orcs are strong against physical attacks, but the nerds said they can be beaten with enough magic. Taking that into account, Haruka searches for any good magic available on his menu. He sees Grand Magic, which is fire, earth, water, and wind, all four under one skill. Everything but fire he got from his packing skill. So once again, he thinks that even the worst skills can come in handy. His thoughts are interrupted when the orc suddenly destroys the tree he was using to hide. Haruka quickly dodges all the attacks, managing to hit the orc on the head with a stick. To his surprise, only this attack takes the orc down, so he's a little taken aback, since he thought physical attacks didn't work. The girls are apparently disappointed that he didn't use magic like he promised, so Haruka decides to go for another target, finding a different orc. He uses a simple fire magic attack, and once again he's surprised to see the orc is taken down by only one shot, as he thought it was supposed to take lots of magic. The girls complain again, clearly upset, saying that they can't learn a thing from this, since he's too strong. Despite all their frustration, the mood of the girls brightens once they finally have their fill of food at night. In the meantime, Haruka decides to set some traps for monsters with some earth magic. His tent wards off enemies and grants perception too, so that should be enough to look after the girls. Once he's done setting the traps, he sees the map he derived from his appraisal skill to decide on tomorrow's route. This allows him to see that the river really starts to snake up ahead, so he wonders what the shortest route is. Out of nowhere, his perception skill goes off, so Haruka hurries to see if there are monsters around. He worries the moment he sees a group wandering around, thinking that it's the delinquents. However, he relaxes once he realizes that it's just the jocks, who approach him in a friendly way. The class rep observes them from afar with curiosity, and Haruka asks them what they're doing out in the woods, assuming that they're after the girls, so they must be dumb stalkers. The jocks are clearly not happy about his accusation, so they quickly clarify that they're not after the girls, but they came here to find him. Haruka asks them why they're hiding from the girls in that case, and with a bit of hesitation, they confess that they can't trust anyone. After all, there was a skill scarier than the dudes with their puppeteer and charm skills. Haruka thinks it over for a moment, since there's only one skill he can think of that's more dangerous than those, and that skill is hijack. The jocks confirm this, saying that the delinquents made a big deal about puppeteer and charm, but never even mentioned hijack, so that must mean they don't have it. Haruka stops them right there and mentions that they're really dumb, asking them what they'd do if he was the one with that skill. A little taken aback, the jocks relax, saying that they'd be fine with it if it was him, and it would even put their mind at ease. Haruka doesn't even know what that's supposed to mean, and he clarifies that he doesn't have that skill, but he did learn subjugate. That skill sounds even worse to the jocks, but they say that if he's the one who has it, then it's no big deal, since they assume he'll be alone anyway. Kakizaki, the leader of the jocks, only advises him to watch out for that skill, saying that they're going to keep an eye on those dudes out in the woods. The next day, Haruka informs the girls that they're headed through the woods again, so they all gear up excitedly. When he's alone, the class rep approaches him, wanting to talk about Kakizaki and the boys, and Haruka tells her that he asked him to apologize to her for them. Clearly nervous, the class rep suddenly apologizes to him, saying that she was going to tell him. Before she finishes speaking, Haruka deduces that what she wanted to tell him is that she has the hijack skill. The class rep immediately asks him how he knew that, since it was a secret between her and Oda's group. He simply answers that it only took one look to figure out, and he bets the jocks are just too dumb to realize. She asks him why he helped her if he knew. After all, hijack is a terrifying skill that steals someone's skills by taking their life, and anyone would be afraid of that. Haruka simply says that there's no reason for him to be scared, and the nerds weren't afraid either. They sealed off the delinquent's puppeteer and charm skills, but they didn't seal hers, so that says it all. It means they were relieved she was the one who has it, and the same goes for him. The class rep tears up, and Haruka runs away when she says that it's his fault that she cries so much lately, but truthfully, she's really grateful. Sometime after that, the group continues advancing through the woods, and Haruka notices they're ahead of schedule, but they'll be stuck camping again tonight. He spots a good-looking riverside, and sees it as a good chance to try out something. He asks the girls to go ahead and scout or something, saying that he'll handle things here. Haruka quickly leaves the group behind, using a combination of magic that makes him faster and lighter, surprisingly allowing him to fly. Being high up in the sky, Haruka pauses for a moment to admire the view, only to realize that he's now falling. Unable to stop it, he uses magic wrap to boost his physical fitness, managing to survive the fall that way. Once he goes back with the girls, the class rep is clearly worried to see him so beaten up when he just went scouting. Haruka explains that he got launched up really high and sort of fell, but that explanation only makes her freak out even more. She scolds him for not communicating anything, but Haruka thinks that when you're normally a loner with no company, you don't communicate at all. Despite getting scolded, thanks to Haruka's scouting, the group is able to make great progress, and after all the ups and downs, they finally make it out of the woods. The girls cheer excitedly, since the town isn't far now, but Haruka stays even more alert now that they're out in the open. The hills block his view, so he decides to take a look into the skills on his menu, noticing a new one named Airwalk, something he probably derived from his walking skill. He decides to try it out, so the class rep freaks out once she suddenly sees him casually walking on air. Haruka asks her to give him a minute, saying that he wants to make sure things are safe out there. He focuses on the area, noticing that things look peaceful, and for the first time, he manages to see their first Isekai natives, real villagers. However, they're being attacked by monsters, so Haruka quickly comes down to inform the class rep. She immediately gets worried, saying that they have to help. But Haruka can't help but think the fact that they're getting attacked by monsters doesn't mean they're good people. He realizes that the girls are too trusting, and seeing their eagerness to help, he tells them that they won't make it in time even if they run. Haruka asks them what they'll do if they're actually bandits, saying that he wouldn't take the risk. Before he leaves, the class rep stops him, saying that if they're bad guys and hurt them, then she will fight, but if they aren't, then she wants to help them. Haruka smiles, since he figured she'd say that, so he tells her that he'll go. Seeing her surprise, he clarifies that's the whole reason he's here in the first place. The girls stare at him with surprise as he prepares to leave, and Haruka knows that he can't run there in time. The magic wrap and weight magic he used yesterday won't even cut it, so it's time to try something new. He prepares himself, deciding that he'll use magic wrap to boost his physical fitness again, and he will use weight magic to make himself lighter. And then, he will use his grand magic to make some wind and fly on it. As he does this, Haruka manages to create a strong whirlwind around him, and then he uses Airwalk to propel himself in the air. He gets excited to see how fast he's going, saying that something like this could take him anywhere. Despite how well everything seems to be going, his excitement quickly turns into worry once he suddenly notices that the class rep is literally clinging to his clothes in the air. Clearly panicked, he asks her what she's doing, and the poor girl explains that she got caught in his wind magic. Before being able to say anything else, the class rep warns him to look ahead and immediately stop. Apparently resigned, Haruka simply says that humans aren't built to stop that fast. The class rep freaks out even more, and before they know it, they crash into the ground, leaving the villagers highly confused. Their crash was so strong they somehow managed to beat up all the monsters, and Haruka asks them if they're okay. The class rep is completely out unconscious, and while she sleeps, the villagers thank Haruka for saving them. The leader of the party introduces himself as Ofter, and his comrade's name is Gatek. Haruka is surprised to see he can understand people here, despite being in an isekai. He asks them why they were getting attacked, and Ofter explains that merchants have been getting assaulted, so the Adventurers Guild put out an extermination request. They thought it would be some easy cash, but in the end, they would have ended up dead if it weren't for Haruka. Ofter instructs his party to gather up everything that's left, and they all wonder how they're going to pay their tabs now. Haruka simply looks around, knowing that there's not much to do until girls get there, and the class rep's still out. He approaches the adventurers and offers some grilled mushrooms, since they're probably pretty worn out, even if they aren't hurt. Gatek accepts the food, clearly pleased at the taste, and also noticing that the mushrooms are stamina caps, something apparently rare. The whole party is completely recovered in a matter of minutes, and Haruka didn't even know that what he offered was that rare. He's still glad that they like them, but for some reason, the fact that these old guys are partied with cute girls like this kind of pisses him off. The class rep finally wakes up, and the first thing she sees is Haruka getting ready to throw fists. Sometime later, the rest of the girls finally catch up, and they're all very excited to see an elf girl for the first time. After a while, the party then guides them to town, and they finally arrive at Omui, the first town they see in this isekai. The girls get really excited to see the place, jumping around like children in an amusement park. For this reason, Haruka draws a line on the ground, and that symbolizes their first step into that new world. In another scene, we finally see again the delinquents in the woods, apparently scheming out something. The leader of the delinquents, Shu Katsuyama, mentions that they already had some good leveling. That means that now they are ready to track down and finally hit the girls, like they've planned all along. The group cheers excitedly, since this is what they've been waiting for so long. However, one of the guys mentions that if they're going to attack the girls, they should get their charm and puppeteer skills unsealed. Only someone with a seal skill can unseal them, so that means that they have to find the nerds first before finally making their move. Now in the town of Omui, the girls are excited to see how fun and alive the place is. Haruka thinks that it's not really a place for a loner like him, but he's glad he managed to take the girls from class safely to town, since that should be the last they'll need of him. The girls are getting a bit too excited about the place, visiting several stores and even wondering if the buildings are edible. The class rep is having a hard time looking over them, so she tries to ask Haruka for help, but he's too busy relaxing in town. She scolds him because of that, and decides to use a whistle to get the girls in line, having them all well trained. Once everyone's gathered, the class rep informs them that they'll head to the Adventurers Guild, where they'll sell off everything they've gathered so far. After that, they'll register with the Adventurers Guild and head to an inn to finally take a proper rest, and they can also ask around about Oda and the others while they're at it. Shimazaki stops her right there after hearing that last bit, asking her if she sees them as just some side errand or something. Haruka teases her, saying that she's probably worried sick about them, but Shimazaki quickly denies it. Once they finally arrive at the Adventurers Guild, Haruka is seemingly terrified with the hostile environment of the place. Before he can regret any decision, one of the adventurers informs him that the boss wants to see him. Haruka tells the class rep to go ahead and get registered with the other girls while he sees what's going on. He nervously walks into the place, noticing that everyone there looks like bad news. When he's finally in front of the guild boss, the man approaches him with an intimidating gaze, but cheerfully shakes his hands as he thanks him for saving Ofter's party. Haruka is clearly taken aback, but deeply relieved as well, since he thought he was in trouble. After that, he decides to sell his magic crystals, and the girl behind the counter explains that they'll appraise the crystals and inform him of their worth. Haruka puts all the crystals on the counter, startling the girl with the huge amount of them. She nervously asks him to wait until tomorrow, since they can't appraise so many crystals. The class rep approaches him after that, telling him that all the girls are all registered as adventurers. It was easy, since they all leveled up a bunch on the way and had overpowered skills from the White Room from the start. Shimazaki quickly pushes him to go register as well, saying that it's now his turn. Haruka is excited to be an adventurer, as he will finally leave his life as a NEET. The class rep looks at him go, telling Ofter that Haruka is going to be an incredible adventurer. After all, none of them would be here today if it weren't for him. Despite all of their hopes, the guild girl apologizes to Haruka, explaining that he has to be at least level 10 in order to register. Haruka immediately falls on his knees, knowing that he's currently level 9, so he asks her if she can make an exception. The girl quickly denies it, explaining that adventurers have to be at least level 10, and they must also be in a party. If he's going solo, he'll be considered a beginner at level 20, and only earn any credibility once he's reached level 30. Haruka feels dejected, knowing that level 20 is too far away, and his loner skill means he can't even form a party, so he's stuck as a NEET forever. Seeing that, the class rep makes a quick decision, saying that if Haruka is down and out, then it's her responsibility to see everyone safe to their lodging. At night, they all get to an inn, since the guild made arrangements there for them. Haruka is taken aback by the appearance of the place, asking if they're at a love hotel, though the class rep quickly denies it and scolds him. The place is pretty normal inside, so they all are able to rest, but Haruka still misses the woods. The next day, they all enjoy sharing a meal together, and the class rep is happy to tell the girls that this town is supposed to be pretty safe, and she's heard there are lots of shops as well. Haruka is glad, thinking that the girls should be fine here in town, so once he gets paid for his crystals, he might head back to the woods. When he goes to the Adventurers Guild, the girl from before deeply apologizes, giving him a bag of money as she says that it is all they have. Haruka tries to calm her down, clarifying that he's not trying to rob her or anything. The guild boss also apologizes, explaining that they aren't done working through the haul he brought in, and they don't have enough cash on hand either. He asks him what he thinks about payments in installments, and Haruka easily agrees, so the guild girl cheers. The boss then gives him the bag of money, saying that there's 8 million ere in there, since that's all they can do for now. Haruka and the class rep try to process that for a bit, thinking that if money's supposed to be worth about the same as it was back in their world, that means they're rich. The guild girl decides to explain the current market, saying that in Haruka's case, he brought enough F-rank ones to earn 8 million, and that also includes payment for defeating the Green Wolves. Haruka thinks that this should be enough to do some shopping before heading back to the woods. Hearing that, Gatek tells him that he knows a certain place he thinks he'd like, so he'll take him there as a thanks. Haruka immediately thinks about a place with cute girls, so he starts walking as he fantasizes about it. However, Gatek simply takes him to a little-known weapon shop, a place that collects specialty articles from dungeons, the perfect shop for less ordinary sorts like himself. A little disappointed, Haruka still decides to try on various garments, like an invisibility cloak, a power glove, and other things. His attention is quickly picked up as he sees a 7 necklace, and he realizes that ever since his appraisal skill hit level 5, his villager A set has had the same description. He decides to ask the shopkeeper about the necklace, wanting to know what Fit 7 means, since that's what his appraisal skill shows him. The man explains that it's referring to combining items, saying that with this necklace, he can combine up to 7 items and use their effects all at once. Haruka sees that as useful, and if his villager A set can do the same, then he can add a bunch more effects to his equipment. He's excited to buy everything, not even aware of the time, so the class rep quickly finds him and scolds him once again, telling him that it's time to go back already, since everyone else is asleep. Haruka tries to convince her to let him stay a little more, at least to buy a missile vine and the necklace. The missile vine suddenly starts glowing, so Haruka gets startled and falls after tripping with a few other items that also start glowing. He soon realizes that he just accidentally combined a lot of items, and the shopkeeper freaks out, saying that something like that is not allowed, especially before purchasing the items. He tells them that all of that was worth well over 10 million era, so now Haruka is the one freaking out. Gatek tries telling the shopkeeper to knock that down a bit for his sake, since they only have 8 million. Haruka has no other choice than to apologize, accepting the fact he won't be able to do any more shopping. The next day, he's in his room sulking and out of cash, despite all the things he wanted to get. They managed to talk the shopkeeper down to 8 million, but that left them broke. He'd love to go out and earn more crystals, but outsiders aren't allowed out of town unless they become adventurers and get a permit. And even if he tries to sneak out with the girls, he's sure he'd get stopped because the class rep doesn't trust him anymore. He realizes that he's not built for a life in life, so he has to get back to the woods. His regular old villager A cape is now combined with an invisibility cloak, so even the class rep won't be able to spot him like this. He feels bad for leaving without saying anything, but the class rep would definitely stop him if he did. Haruka swiftly sneaks out of the guild, but just as he's about to hop over the walls, some of the girls spot him, asking him what he's doing. That distraction makes him lose focus, so he accidentally trips and falls, seeing the volleyball girls A and B and gymnast girl surrounding them. These girls are like the elite 4 of the girl jocks, but he notices one of them is missing. He spots the last one of the group, Nagisa, looking at some clothes in a shop nearby. She's the naturist girl who looks ready to strip any second now and makes everyone panic. The group quickly runs towards her to stop her, but Nagisa asks them to quit fussing since she's still fully dressed. Haruka glances at her and tells her that it's more like half undressed since she doesn't have any pants on. His first attempt to escape failed miserably, and the next say the class rep and the others are finally off on their first quest. Haruka asks them if he can go with them, but the class rep immediately shuts him off, saying that he tried to run away yesterday. He still manages to escape the town a few moments after, simply using his invisibility cloak. Finally free, Haruka runs towards the forest, ignoring everything else, even when he runs into the typical Isekai situation where a girl in a carriage is being ambushed by a group of bandits. He ignores the situation, simply wanting to go home, but one of the bandits spots him and immediately attacks him, saying that all witnesses die. Haruka uses fire bullets to attack them, telling them that he just wants to get back to the woods and be alone. He recognizes that his wooden staff or stick got upgraded thanks to that missile vine that got fused. The bandits try to take him down with close combat, but are also quickly countered. They try to use weapons, and Haruka admits that their attacks are strong, but he still easily dodges everything. At the end, he doesn't even have to do anything, since the bandits run out of breath and pass out on their own. Their weapon skills were scary, but these guys themselves are still pretty weak. Without wanting to, Haruka ends up saving the girl, who comes out of the carriage to offer her gratitude, introducing herself as Marielle, saying that she comes from a noble family. However, Haruka actually barely did anything, so she doesn't exactly know what to say or what to thank him for. After all, he tried to ignore and abandon her at first, so perhaps thanking him is not appropriate. At the very least, he has her utmost appreciation, and she'd like to know his name. Haruka introduces himself, and Marielle tells him that she's the daughter of the lord of a certain town, so she asks him to accompany her on the remainder of her trip. Haruka hesitates for a bit, since all he wants is to get back to being alone in the woods. Marielle tells him that after the attack, she really fears for her safety, and she would also like to show her gratitude. That quickly gets Haruka's attention, and he immediately asks her what kind of gratitude she means. Clearly interested in the compensation, he decides to go with her, planning to leave as soon as he drops her. He complains about the town he came from during the trip, saying that the lord of a town like that is probably as shabby as the town itself. Marielle suddenly starts sobbing, revealing that she's the shabby daughter of that shabby lord he's talking about. She apologizes for acting so lofty despite her lowly, nameless origins, clearly feeling bad after what he said. Wanting to confirm his suspicions, Haruka asks her for the name of that shabby town, freaking out once he hears they're heading back to Omoi. She doesn't let him go, so they go back to the town, and Haruka's second attempt to escape fails once again. In another scene, we see the jocks facing the delinquents in the woods, wanting to stop them from getting to the girls. Just as the leader of the delinquents is about to attack, he's suddenly stabbed by a mysterious person. The jocks now try to face this mysterious student that is suddenly attacking them, but this unknown guy easily takes the delinquents down, so they decide to run away. However, this student catches up to them, carrying a huge sword he will use to take them down as well. In another scene, we see Haruka loudly complaining in the carriage of the princess, saying that he doesn't want to go back to Omoi. The princess is clearly hurt by his reaction, so Haruka is unable to say no after seeing her pouty expression. Once they arrive at the lord's manor, the place is so big that it makes him feel nervous. He observes a painting of the lord of Omoi and his wife for a moment, and then simply decides to go home. Marielle stops him before he can leave, reminding him that she asked him to wait for her while she got changed. She informs him that she's going to see he's well rewarded, so he has to stay right there. Haruka can't decline, so the next thing we see is him sitting in front of a feast, excited to see so much food. Marielle tells him that she invited him here to thank him for saving her from those bandits. Despite trying to be grateful, when she notices that Haruka is barely listening to her, she can hardly contain her anger. He's too busy enjoying his food, but Marielle proceeds to give him his reward in money as well, and since he mentioned not having a form of ID, she offers him one, explaining that with it, he will be allowed to come and go from town as he pleases. It will also act as proof of his person, so she hopes that he uses this chance to remember the name of the town. When she sees that Haruka is still not listening, Marielle seems dejected, feeling defeated even after she got all dressed up for him. The next day, the girls interrogate Haruka for disappearing last night, but he quickly explains that he was invited to the lord's manor, so he wasn't sneaking out of town or anything. The class rep is still suspicious of him, asking him why he got invited there in the first place. He doesn't know how to answer that, but the other girls decide to leave it like that, wanting to go on their next quest. Before leaving, the class rep reminds him that he's not allowed to leave town for any reason. Haruka seems to agree with that, but as soon as they leave, he quickly takes his chance, since now there are no obstacles stopping him from leaving town. After all, now he has an ID, so it's time to go alone again. Before that though, he decides to buy stuff with the money he got from Marielle, eat all the non-mushroom food there is, and leave a note for the class rep, something she won't get mad about. In the note, he says that he's going to go check on the jocks, so he asks them to level up and wait for him. He's actually worried about them, so it's not entirely a lie. After leaving that note, he finally exits the town without any problem thanks to his ID, so he immediately heads to the woods, deciding to ignore any carriage under attack from now on. Haruka gets excited to finally see the same old mushrooms, the fish in the river, and the goblins and kobolds too. He's glad to be finally back in his place, wanting to go back home as soon as possible. A giant orc attacks him as he advances through the woods, and Haruka easily takes it down with one blow. But he still thinks that it's weird to see an orc there, since they're usually deeper in the woods. He's glad to see the stuff he bought from that sketchy vendor works great, and with so many items combined, life in the woods should be easy. However, as he advances through the woods, he feels something's up, wondering what's going on when he suddenly sees bloodstains on the ground. He thinks it can't possibly be from the nerds, as they're Isekai pros, so it must be from the jocks, as he hasn't seen them since they split. Haruka also wonders why the delinquents have not left the woods yet, and just then, his enemy detection goes off. He immediately follows a path of blood, wondering if the jocks really face the delinquents. Haruka stops in his tracks when he suddenly meets the sight of the jocks slumped on the ground, unconscious and beaten up. When he notices that they're still breathing, he quickly uses every mushroom potion he's made, desperately wanting to save them. Kakisaki is the first one to wake up, and he's glad to see Haruka, wanting to know if the girls are okay. Haruka lets him know that the girls are okay, laughing it up in town, and it's all thanks to them. Once the other jocks finally wake up, they tell Haruka everything that happened, informing him that the delinquents are now dead. They don't know anything about the nerds or if they were attacked, but this mysterious guy is tough since they couldn't even hold a match against him. He stole all the weapons they got in that white room, and he's a mathematical genius, so he might have been planning this all along. Kakisaki informs Haruka that they do know who he's after next, and that is Tuka Tsuyuri, mostly known as the class rep. After all, she's the one with the hijack skill, a skill that allows the user to steal someone's skills by killing them. Haruka knows it's a wicked OP skill, but he and the nerds should be the only ones who know that Tuka has it. Kakisaki explains that they managed to figure it out because that guy kept asking where she was, so he must have gotten that intel somewhere. However, the guy apparently lost track of her, so that's why he attacked them, but stopped shy of finishing them. He probably figured they'd seek her out for help, so they decided to turn the tables and hid in the woods instead. He's going to follow their blood trail and show up here, so Kakisaki says that if they fight along with Haruka, they can definitely win. Haruka doesn't say anything, thinking that he doesn't need to involve himself in this fight, as all he wants to do is live in peace here and be alone. Despite that, he accepts to deal with this, but he clarifies that he's going to fight alone. The jocks are clearly taken aback, saying that they can fight too, and he can't possibly take him down alone. Once they see Haruka is truly determined in doing this, the jocks finally accept, asking him if he has a plan. Haruka confirms this, telling them that their only job is to head for town and apologize to their class rep for being so dumb. Highly offended, the jocks have no other choice than to listen, so they all leave after saying that the rest is up to him. Deep down, Haruka actually thinks that it might have been better to have them around, but if all of them go down, there won't be anyone left to protect the girls, so fighting this guy is his job alone. He decides to toughen up with the time he has left, preparing for what's coming. In the meantime, Tuka is desperately looking for him in town along with the other girls. They try to reassure the class rep, saying that he's probably fine since he left a note, so all they can do now is wait and level up, as he said. Haruka is currently analyzing his enemy, as the jocks told him all about his OP weapon skill. Weapon skills are powerful, but once they start, they leave you open because you can't cancel out of them. If he wants to beat this guy, he needs to come up with a new skill that'll take advantage of that weakness. Haruka notices that some goblins have been drawn to the place because of the smell of blood on the ground. Monsters as tough as these are usually deeper in the woods, so he decides to use appraisal to see their stats. They're pretty high level, but he decides to see it as an advantage, taking the opportunity to practice a little by fighting them. Even after he takes them all down, he still doesn't level up, so he wishes he could fight something stronger. With his perception skill, he manages to spot a Goblin King of level 23, and even Haruka is surprised to see these things actually show up. Still, it's the perfect timing, since it's exactly what he needs in order to finally level up. The Goblin King immediately runs towards him, and Haruka quickly dodges his attack, noticing how fast this monster is. He barely manages to dodge another attack, using the evade skill he combined with his cloak. The Goblin King lashes out at him again, and Haruka can tell that this monster's got powerful weapon skills, as he can only barely evade them. After a while, he's able to take some distance from the giant Goblin King, so he decides that it's time to try something. Using Magic Wrap and combining a bunch of skills together, Haruka is able to take the King Goblin down with one quick swoop of his staff. He's glad to see that even with the absolute worst skills, he can get something new once he combines them. Haruka suddenly detects bloodlust when a monster appears right behind him, so he immediately moves away. It's right then that he sees something worse than the Goblin King, a Goblin Emperor of level 50. Haruka is only level 9, so he knows that he can't possibly win head-on against this monster. He has no choice but to try what he did again, mixing all his bad skills up into a new made-up one. Once he does that, he manages to land a hit, but the Goblin Emperor stands back up and launches at Haruka, scratching his cheek. Haruka can only dodge all the attacks, noticing that this monster is also using weapon skills. He's able to cause some damage after a while, but the Goblin Emperor heals his wounds, so Haruka decides to use another made-up skill. However, the Goblin attacks first, making him crash against some trees with great strength. Haruka still doesn't give up, saying that he's not as beat up as the jocks were yet. At dawn, he's already taken the Emperor Goblin down, and he finally levels up from 9 to 11. Haruka goes back home after that, checking the new skills he got, and finally getting how Master of None works. He doubts he's at the level to match him yet, but at least he got the skill he wanted. His made-up skill handles the opening left from using a weapon skill, and lets him attack with no prep as soon as he selects the skill. Later that day, we finally see this mysterious guy, who heads straight towards Haruka's place. This student finally reveals his identity, and Haruka immediately recognizes him as Tanaka, the nerd who seemed to be intimidated by the delinquents, but was actually the mastermind behind. While this is happening, we see the girls go back to the town after a long day of leveling up, feeling like legit adventurers now. Some of them are still kind of worried about Haruka, since it's been 2 whole days, and he's still not back. There is nothing they can do about that anyway, and they have to keep leveling up even without him. The group suddenly sees Kakisaki and his group waiting for them right outside the town, so the class rep immediately runs towards them, clearly worried. She asks them why they're so beaten up, but Kakisaki assures that they're fine now. Tuka is happy to think that Haruka might be with them, but their expressions say the opposite, which makes her feel disappointed. Kakisaki then informs her that right now Haruka is out there fighting in the woods, and he's doing it all alone. The class rep now is clearly worried, and in the meantime, Haruka is facing Tanaka, saying that it's been a while, but he welcomes him to his place. Tanaka is disappointed to see that the jocks didn't lead him to the class rep, but they led him to a creepy place instead. It's a shame after all that work he did to fake his way with the delinquents and control them all. Tanaka admits that he planned all of this from the start, confessing that he was the one who used them to break the class up. Haruka is clearly upset, asking him what happened with the other guys, besides the delinquents and the jocks. Tanaka simply answers that they're all dead, and he decides to leave, saying that he has no time to waste on a loner with nothing but the worst skills. Before he can leave, Haruka stops him, saying that even loners have people they want to keep safe, so he'll fight him right here and right now. And that's it for this video. If you liked it, then subscribe to support the channel, comment the word master to prove that you stayed till the end, since not a lot of people do.